You are watching
Ask the Instructor. Absorb the knowledge. Become the expert.
It is 12 noon on Wednesday, which means it's time for this week's episode of Ask the Instructor. I'm John Chrismo, and the show is brought to you by the Tampa School of Real Estate. And what we're talking about today are study tips for your Florida real estate exam. So, look, there is a wrong way to study. That's what I want to start this out with. There absolutely is a wrong way to study. And not wrong that it might not eventually get you there. But, I mean, you can drive around in circles and you'll eventually get wherever it is that you're trying to go, eventually. But after wasting a lot of gas, after spending a lot of time, spending money, you know, that state exam, and yeah, it is only $36 every time you take that state exam. But then what happens if you have to take that state exam 10 times? It's $360 you're spending to take that exam. Lot worse than just $36. So you don't want to go into this with that mentality of, you know, I'm just going to fake it till I make it, figure it out. You want to go in there knowing for sure that you're going to walk out of that exam passing, because you going in there with that confidence, that's going to make sure that you're able to perform at your best, to really have the highest score you could possibly have. So going into these study tips, number one most important thing is study the right topics. And so what I mean when I say study the right topics, look, there's a ton of stuff you could Google for free online about real estate exams. But look, and you could talk to people that have had licenses in other states and came and got a license here in Florida. Florida is so different than most other states. Maybe that works all right for some other states. There's a lot of states that even use the same real estate textbook for their courses. Florida isn't one of them. Even the nationwide publishers of textbook have a different textbook for Florida, because Florida has a different set of laws. We have a different set of standards. Things in real estate in Florida work differently than they do throughout the country. That's why we only have mutual recognition with like 5 or 6 other states. And even then you still have to pass a Florida real estate exam and able to get that Florida real estate license. So studying the right topics is all about making sure that you're not wasting your time and really confusing yourself further by studying the laws of another state, by studying something that, look, I'll be honest with you, when I first got my real estate instructor license, I didn't have a firm grasp on everything, especially compared to the level of knowledge it is I have today and the level of understanding I have today about these topics. So just because somebody says this is the way it is, somebody says this is what it is or how this works, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. So what that means is you've got to have a level of scrutiny for anything it is that you're using to study for your real estate exam, because it might not just be a waste of your time, it could actually be actively hurting you in preparing you for that exam. Now, you know, what's the easy fix around this? Because you could go through and spend the hours and the time researching everything and fact-checking everything with the laws to make sure it is accurate, but that's not the most efficient use of your time. So look, if you want a trustworthy source for exam prep study materials, contact us. We're the experts in this. We've been doing this here in Florida for years. We've helped thousands of people get their real estate license. We've had thousands of students just in this past year. I think this year we're already over a few thousand students. So this is what we specialize in. This is our expertise. We don't have the bank of test questions. Nobody does. But we have so much experience in preparing people for the Florida real estate exam that I guarantee you our exam prep materials are going to be better and superior to anything else it is that you find out there. And yes, they do cost money for that. You know, we got to keep ourselves here in business, but you will see return on investment on these materials. Because having to not just take that exam a few extra times is already going to give you that return on investment, let alone just you going into your real estate career much more confidently and comfortably because you've studied. So it's all about studying the right topics. And that's, again, making sure it's not other states' laws that you're studying. Just because it's for a real estate exam doesn't necessarily mean it's the Florida real estate exam. So that's number one. Make sure you're studying Florida laws. Number two, make sure what you're studying is accurate and correct. And number three, and this is probably the most important out of all of them, because number one and two should be a given, that number one, it's about Florida, number two, it's accurate, but number three, it's an important topic for the exam. You might have seen the FREC syllabus or the breakdown of percentages. If you have any of our exam prep tools, we've got that included in all of them there, where it gives you the breakdown of each chapter of which percentage is how much on the exam. And there's some chapters on the exam that are just 1%. Entire, if you look in textbooks and whatnot and what the Florida Real Estate Commission requires to be taught, and really there are, even in those 1% chapters, a lot of different things they could ask out of that 1% chapter, but it's still only going to be one question. It's still only going to be one question on your exam out of that 1% chapter. Now, if there are 100 chapters and they're all 1%, then yeah, that would be fairly equal and fair. But it's not the case. There's the contract chapter, which is 12% of your exam. That chapter really isn't much longer, if at all, than some of these other chapters that are much lower percentages, but that's such an important topic that the Florida Real Estate Commission wants you to know, that makes up 12% of your exam. One of the longest chapters in the course, with the most dense, the most amount of information, but also it is another 12% chapter, is brokerage activities. So right there you've got 2 units, 2 chapters, contracts and broker activities, that make up a quarter, 24% technically, of your exam. And yet then you have 3 chapters that are just 1% each, or 3% of your exam, from 3 different chapters versus 2 chapters being a quarter of your exam. You see what I'm talking about here, about studying the right topics, not just trying to know everything. Look, the textbook you typically get for the pre-licensing course is like 500-600 pages long. It's a lot of information that's in there. And technically everything is fair game in that textbook, and if you want to make it your life's mission to make sure that you know that textbook cover to cover, front to back, that you know every last detail and you're confident that you know those details, you should have no problem passing. But that's going to be an immense undertaking. And it'd be one thing if, just getting the real estate license and passing the exam, you got paid for doing that. But no, you don't. You don't get paid until you've got the license and you're out there making some actual money with this. This is just that bar that the Florida Real Estate Commission wants you to be able to pass in order to prove that you have a minimal competence, that you're going to operate and practice legally in Florida. So that's really, again, that's really the most important thing, is making sure, and this is probably the biggest mistake I see people make. There's, again, a lot of stuff you could Google, and even stuff that seems like it might be from a reputable source. A lot of brokerage companies like to put out maybe some sort of practice exam or something like that, because they ultimately want to try to recruit you to work for their brokerage, and so they know that you need to pass the exam. So they're like, okay, well let's go ourselves go Google an exam and go stick that on our website for new agents. But I've had a lot of students show me these things, and I'm like, where did you find this? Where did you get this from? Just because the stuff that's on there, again, isn't necessarily important, and I've found a lot of inaccuracies with a lot of these things. And it's not necessarily even that they're intentionally careless or intentionally trying to have wrong information, but the other part of this is these laws change every day. Not exactly every day, but you get the idea. They change very often. So if you're looking at materials from 5 years ago, chances are there's a lot of information from 5 years ago that has changed to where it is today, and it's a completely different thing. We have a lot of people that had a real estate license previously and maybe got it 5-10 years ago, and sometimes even longer than that, and now they want to get it back again. And going through the process again, they're like, oh wow, a lot has changed. A lot of this is different. This seems harder than it was before. And they're right. And that's the reason why you want to make sure you do your post-licensing and continue your education, so you don't ever lose that license. You don't ever have to go back to square one and start all over again. But again, this information changes. There's different information by states. There's sometimes people that just have misunderstanding about the information. And then on top of all that, you've got to make sure that you're looking at the most important topics that are most likely to be on your exam. You could spend hours studying that 1% chapter, but it's still only going to be one question on your exam, and that's really not going to help you out at all. There's one, but then now you still need another 74% to be able to pass your state exam. So it's really about making sure that you're diving into just those most important topics. Look, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, I got more exam prep tips for you, more things that you want to try to avoid to make sure you spend your exam prep time as efficiently as possible. So stick with us. I'm John Carissimo. You're watching Ask the Instructor.
The most powerful tool to study for your real estate exam is the Question Simulator from Tampa School of Real Estate. We've used our years of experience in preparing students for the Florida real estate exam to bring you the most powerful exam study tool available. In the Question Simulator, you'll be able to go directly to a particular unit so you can focus on the sections where you need the most practice. We have also included the percentages of each unit so you know which units are the most important for your real estate exam. Every question will immediately give you detailed feedback, which is almost always more important than the question or the answer themselves. After completing all the questions in a particular unit, you can go through question by question and review any that you've gotten wrong. You could also print out a report at the end of each quiz. The Question Simulator from Tampa School of Real Estate is 100% mobile compatible, so you can practice with test questions anywhere you have your phone with you. Enroll now at questionsimulator.com and get ready to pass your exam.
Hey, welcome back to this week's episode of Ask the Instructor. I'm almost thinking it's Friday. If you haven't tuned in with us on Fridays we do a little show called State of Real Estate. And, Wednesdays are all about the technical side, especially exam prep type of stuff, making sure that you're able to get the license so all this stuff becomes possible, that you're able to make money, start your new career, and so on and so forth. But on Fridays, and, honestly, Friday is a little bit more of a preference to me, because now it's all about that exciting thing about making money and ways it is that you could really grow your real estate business and accelerate it and take it to that next level. So on Fridays, make sure you're tuned in here as well. Same time, same place, just on Friday, 12 noon, State of Real Estate. And again, that's where we talk about growing your real estate business. So make sure that you tune in this Friday, like we do that on every Friday. And of course, if you guys have questions here, make sure you drop those in the comments. Looks like we got a question coming from Roberto. How much is the training? So we've got courses, online classroom, we've got some study tools, all kinds of stuff. Best thing to do is contact one of our advisors. The phone number's right below. It's 813-333-2676. So give us a call. It's 813-333-2676. And one of our advisors will walk you through the whole process of the licensing process, what courses you need to take, what the requirements are. So again, that's 813-333-2676. You can also find us online at tampaschool.com. We've got a lot of great information on there as well. But look, this can be definitely an overwhelming process, and that's why we're here. We're here to help you guys through this. Even once you're in there, it's again making sure that you're studying those appropriate topics. So, number one, studying the right topics. That's probably what is the most important. Number two, repetition. There's a saying that repetition is the mother of all learning, the father of all learning, the parent of all learning, whatever it is that you want to call it. But without repetition, how many times have you done something once, that you maybe heard something once or said something once, and that really just stuck with you forever? Chances are it didn't, because that's not usually what happens. You usually don't say something once and it just sticks with you forever. It's the repetition. It's doing it again and again and again. Think back like when you learned how to ride a bike. You didn't just, hop on that bike and you didn't have any training wheels and you just took off like you're Lance Armstrong, or he's the bike rider, right? Lance Armstrong, the Tour de France guy. So that's not the case. You start off with the training wheels, and even with the training wheels, somehow you manage to fall off, and then you get down to that little one training wheel thing, and then you're going and you're kind of getting it, and then you take that training wheel off and it's still kind of bumpy, but the more it is that you do it, the more repetition that you have, the easier it is. You want to get good at anything, repetition is the answer. There's a lot of other things that factor into it as well, but without the repetition, You know, you've got to be studying the right topics, you got to be doing the right things, learning the right things, but if you're not putting the repetition behind it, just going through the course once and just taking in that information once without doing any extra studying or anything like that, you know, there's always that statistical probability that you'll pass your exam. So the real estate exams, they're multiple choice. They're A, B, C, D multiple choice. And for the class exam, you need a 70%. For the state exam, you get a 75%. In the grading system, it's either you get a point or you don't get a point. So what that means is there is a very slim statistical probability that you just go take this exam and you somehow magically pass it. But chances are that's not going to happen. I'd like to see the odds on that for any of you guys out there that are a statistician or anything like that could tell me, you know, what percentage it is that your likelihood to pass with just randomly guessing on 100 questions on the A, B, C, D. But it could happen. But if you study those topics that are going to be tested on and you're having the repetition, and really the repetition, that adds time to all of this here. I don't expect you to repeat the entire course. We get students that'll contact us and say, hey, look, I'm trying to study. Can I just repeat the entire course? And, you know, that is a possibility that you go and retake the entire course. And, you know, sometimes if it's been like a couple years since you've taken the course, then yeah, you need to go retake that course again to make sure that you go relearn that all over from the beginning. But once you've gone through that, you've gotten everything that you'd possibly need, and now it's time to hone in on those most important key points, those right topics that we're talking about. So one of our study tools is the MP3 audio review, and that takes the entire 63-hour course and condenses it down to just 5 hours. 5 hours and 10 minutes, technically. We looked at the numbers of it yesterday. So 5 hours and 10 minutes and some change in seconds. It condenses down that entire course from 63 hours to 5 hours, because now what that allows you to have is the repetition. Yeah, you're not repeating everything, and there's probably going to be one or two things here and there that maybe you either don't remember or maybe wasn't part of that review, because, you know, that's not guaranteed to cover everything because it cuts so much out. But those most important key points that are almost guaranteed to be on your exam are covered in that MP3 audio review, and that helps you narrow down to just what those most important topics are. And now when you're down to just 5 hours, yeah, that's still a lot, but you could repeat that 5 hours as much as necessary. You know, you could, if compared to going through the course all over again, if we're going to, you know, just compare that to, you know, like 60 hours, you could go through that MP3 12 times. And what's nice about that is you just listen anytime. So that enables you to have that repetition because you've condensed it down to just what those most important factors are. So the repetition is so important because what you want is, with this exam, it's designed to make you second guess yourself. It's designed to have common sense booby trapped. Common sense booby traps throughout the exam. You know, like the little booby traps I used to see in the cartoons. What was it? The Roadrunner and the Coyote that always go set these little, like the Coyote trying to get the Roadrunner and set these ridiculous traps. And that's what you're having on the exam, but these traps are really appealing. You know, and the little like Roadrunner cartoons and whatnot, the Roadrunner could kind of see what the tricks were and were able to get around it. The tricks aren't that obvious on the exam, but it's booby trapped in there where you might think it's one way, but if you really know the law from the course, you know this is really the answer as opposed to this that might appeal to somebody who doesn't have the knowledge of that course material. So that's where the repetition comes in, because sometimes you've got to unlearn your assumptions. You might already have some assumptions, especially if you have a license in another state, if you have any real estate experience, if you have anything that's going to conflict with the information you're learning in the course. That repetition is going to help push that out to where what you're repeating now is ultimately now becoming the most important. So repetition is essential. But now moving on to the third thing. So you do want to narrow down your key points to what's the most important that you need to know, and then you want to have the repetition over that. But then what you've got to do now is test yourself. Test yourself before you wreck yourself. Test yourself to see if you really know what you're talking about. And again, I'm not talking about just some sort of free practice exam that you find online, that you Googled free practice exam and you found something and you don't know if that's based on Florida, you don't know if it's up to date, you don't know if it's accurate, you don't know if it's the right topics. So yes, that at least is a start. But ultimately, when you test yourself, you want to try to emulate and simulate the exam as much as possible. Because when you simulate that exam testing environment with questions that are structured just like it, now again, that disclaimer, we don't have the exam that the Florida Real Estate Commission holds as the state exam. They actually pull from like 2,000 questions. At least that's what the rumor is. Even the official count of question is all protected information. And I will tell you this though, they are adding new questions to it every day to increase that bank. So who knows, I say 2,000, maybe it's 10,000 questions they're really pulling from. There's a lot of potential questions they pull from. And the goal with, and this is a mistake, a huge mistake I see students make, is that they'll go and find one of these practice exams or somehow that they could find questions, and even if they're good questions. So our question simulator, that's the best tool we recommend for this. But even with our question simulator, there's still that possibility that you don't use it correctly. And here's the reason why. What's most important, and we've got this as a disclaimer right at the beginning. There's a video right at the beginning of our question simulator that walks you through how to use this. And it says that the question is not what's important. The question is not what you want to study. You want to use, because when you're testing, you're really using. You're using this practice question to test yourself. You're using the practice question to test your knowledge. But what a lot of students will do is they'll get hung up on those wrong answers. And what happens when you think too much about those wrong answers? You start adding repetition to the wrong answers. Well, whatever it is that you throw the repetition on, even if it's the wrong information, even if it's inaccurate information, that repetition is going to make it stick. So if you focus too much on those wrong answers, you're going to set yourself up for failure, because now you're going to start remembering the wrong answers as opposed to remembering the right answers. So what you want to do is you want to go into using the question simulator or whatever practice questions that you're doing. Again, you want to make sure it's the right information. And the repetition, not so much with the questions, because you're now using this. This is really what you're shifting in from. You're shifting from repetition of the key points to seeing now if you could apply that key point in a more complex scenario, in a more complex situation. Something that is structured like it would be on your state exam, but maybe not the exact question. Now, we have had a lot of people tell us that, oh yeah, your question simulator, that's fantastic. There's a ton of stuff I remember on my exam that I remember from my question simulator. And we're so happy that we're able to be accurate with that. But they change these questions. If we get too good and we're getting too many people getting these questions correct, then what do? They either, if there's way too many people getting it correct, they go revise the question or pull it completely, and they're now asking new questions. So the goal here, again, isn't necessarily to memorize the question or memorize the answers, but with our question simulator, and this is really the most important part about testing your knowledge, is correcting. You've got to correct what your wrong understandings are. Correct your understanding. So if you think something is one way and you don't ever go to correct it, you're going to be in trouble. And what a lot of people will do with a practice test is they'll go through and they'll do like a 50 or 100 question practice exam, and then they'll go grade their answers. And the reason why that's probably the worst way to use a practice exam is, well, number one, I mean, you're already going to be exhausted by the time you get to that, so you're already wearing yourself out. But then number two, when you go back to grade yourself to see if you did it, if you passed, if you're good on that, you go to mark a question wrong because you didn't get it right because you picked the wrong answer, but you're looking at it and you're wondering, what was I thinking? Why did I pick that answer? What was going through my head? And you forgot. And that's expected if you just did 100 questions. These questions are not easy questions. If they're good questions that are supposed to be similar to the state exam, they're not going to be easy questions. They're questions that will make you think, that will challenge you, that will be a little bit tricky at times. So what you want to do after every single question is check yourself right there in the moment. And that's what our question simulator is designed to do. And all these tools that I'm recommending, it's all available at passfirsttry.com. You'll see that link floating down here below, so check that out after the stream, passfirsttry.com. We've got demos for all of our exam prep tools, so make sure you check that out at passfirsttry.com. But look, with our question simulator, the way it's set up, You get something wrong immediately, it pops right up with not only that you're wrong, but an explanation. And if you get it right, it still gives you that explanation because, maybe you guessed and that's why you got it right. So you've got to be honest with yourself. And that's really the last tip that I want to throw up here is to be honest. Be honest with yourself. Tell yourself, yeah, I didn't know that. I need to go back. The sooner it is that you're willing to be honest with yourself, especially about what your shortfalls are, your shortcomings are, not only for studying for your exam, but also growing your real estate business, you'll be able to do that at a faster pace when you're honest about what it is that you need to improve on. And that's something we could all get to. It takes a little bit of effort to admit that we could possibly be wrong, but if it's, just between you and yourself and you and the computer, then yeah, you could admit that you're wrong every now and then, because what you're doing is you're now figuring out why you're wrong so you can now become right. And some of these questions you might not always agree with the answer. And chances are if you don't agree with the answer, it goes back to the beginning. You've got to go back and now look at why is this the way it is? And usually that explanation right in our question simulator is going to accomplish that right there. It explains why you're getting something right or wrong. And that will help you correct your understanding if there is any misunderstanding. So that way you know that you can walk into that exam prepared. But then what you could also do, if there's a certain section that you're struggling in, both our MP3 and our question simulator are broken down by section. So let's say that chapter 5, the brokerage activities, that's 12% of the exam. Let's say that you're not scoring that hot in there. So you go in there and you take a practice quiz on those brokerage activity questions and you miss a lot of them. And there's a lot of misunderstanding that you have. Well, then you could hop back in the MP3, just go straight to Unit 5 brokerage activities, 12% of the exam, and just listen to that one chapter. I think the longest any of our chapters are maybe about 40 minutes in that MP3 audio review. Maybe not even quite that long, maybe 35 minutes. I'd have to look at the exact breakdown to be 100% with that. But they're not too long. So, and that's probably one of the longest ones is the brokerage activities because there's so much information in there. But now you could go in and spend 30, 40 minutes, sometimes even less than that for some of the shorter chapters, and just drill on that one chapter and go through that a couple of times now. And this repetition, it not only goes for the number, the quantity, but the time that you space this out with. Ideally, you want to start this on day one. You go in there day one and start with taking the course, whether you're doing that online or in a classroom. And after day one, you want to go now and make sure that you're reinforcing what you did on day one and now testing yourself on day one to make sure that you've got that down. And then as you progress further through the course, you keep doing that for these earlier segments so that way you don't forget what it is that you already know and you maintain that correct understanding. And yes, this does take work for that. Now, the other work, if you're not willing to do this work, is the work of taking that exam again and again and again and again and again and again. And, sometimes, luck may have it. Again, the statistics may have it that you just go in there and you're able to pass just by randomly selecting A, B, C, or D for 75 out of the 100 answers that you need to get correct. And that very slim odds that this happens, that you are able to get that 75%, maybe you pass right there. But I challenge you. I'm in the real estate education field. We're here at Tampa School of Real Estate, and we don't find people that say, oh yeah, I didn't study at all. I just went in there and passed the exam, no problem. We do get people that say, hey, I passed the exam, no problem, but it's because I studied like you told me to. So you will learn all the information you need to know in the course, but now the question is, are you going to remember that? Are you going to make sure that you're able to apply that? And that's where, again, it comes on you. And you've got to be honest with yourself that you know this stuff, that you're able to apply this stuff, and that you're able to successfully pass the exam because you put in the necessary work ahead of time. So that's our study tips for today. Again, make sure you're studying the right topics. Make sure you're using repetition on those essential key points. Make sure you're testing yourself. But again, don't study the practice questions. Use the practice questions and study the explanations. Correct your understandings there in the moment when you have that wrong, that misunderstanding. Correct that right then and there, and then be honest when you've got to backtrack and go back to the basics and go back to those fundamentals, go back to those key points, and then retest your knowledge again after you've done that. And you go through this whole kind of cyclical process going forward, backing it up a little bit, and basically mastering not everything, but those most important topics. And Again, as you set up your study plan, study the right topics. Start with those chapters that are the largest percentages on the exam. You should be starting with number 1, brokerage activities, and number 2, contracts. You could put contracts on top, but contracts is a little bit more condensed. It's not as much as what's in the brokerage activity chapters. But those two 12% chapters, those need to be at the top of your list, and then you work your way down based on those percentages. Because there's no sense in studying a 1% chapter when it's only going to be one question on your exam. You know, unless you're truly trying to master everything, I really wouldn't spend any time studying those 1% chapters. Focus on those chapters that make up the largest percentage of your exam. So that's all the time we've got for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Remember, tune in on Friday for State of Real Estate. We're going to talk about how to grow your real estate business to take it to the next level. Thank you guys for tuning in today, and I'll see you Friday. Hey, so if you're thinking about starting a real estate career, it could feel a little overwhelming sometimes. Look, that's completely understandable. That's why we're here to help. If you haven't already, check out our Success Center, tampaschool.com/success, or if you don't even know where to begin, give us a call. We'd love to help you out. We've got advisors standing by to answer any questions you have and assist you in any way it is that we can. Our phone number is 813-928-0106. Again, that's 813-928-0106. Give us a call. We're the Tampa School of Real Estate.
Do you want a career that allows you to be in control? With a career in real estate, you'll get to call the shots. Whether you're looking at starting part-time or want to become the next top agent, a career in real estate makes it possible. Find out what it takes at tampaschool.com. Do you want to incorporate studying for your real estate exams into your busy schedule? Now you can review the key topics you need to know to pass your class and state exams with our MP3 audio review. Simply pop in your headphones or connect to your car to reinforce crucial information while you exercise or drive. Listen to the first unit for free at mp3audioreview.com. That's mp3audioreview.com.
Are you thinking about a career in real estate? Hey, I'm John Chrisma with the Tampa School of Real Estate, and we've helped thousands of people just like you obtain their real estate license. If you're thinking about a career in real estate, give us a call. The phone number is 813-928-0106. Our advisors are standing by to answer any questions you have and assist you in any way they can. Hey, if you're enjoying the show today,